Thanks for joining us again on DBS TV for the news. In Cameroon, food crisis is a problem which is remarkably being handled compared to the situation in a near past, though research has shown that 2.7 million people are affected by food crisis in the country, as reviewed by the National Programme for Monitoring and Strengthening Food Security on December 15, 2020. The Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Gabriel Mbairobe, has launched the International Year of Fruits and Vegetables 2021 in Cameroon. During the launching ceremony in Yaoundé, the results of the analysis on food security in Cameroon for the year 2020 were made public, with the northern regions in a less desirable situation in terms of agricultural production.
Agricultural production is relatively good in the far north and Adamawa region, except in some divisions such as Nogonoshari, Mayo-Saba and Bere, where floods and civil insecurity disrupted the agro-pastoral farming season.
As for the southern part of the country, food security is less of a concern as production has stayed on an encouraging level. However, the southwest and northwest regions are negatively affected as a result of socio-political crisis.
In the southern part of the country, agro-meteorological factors favored the smooth running of the farming season. However, there was a great disruption in the northwest and southwest regions, a situation related to the socio-political crisis that caused farmers to abandon some agro-pastoral production areas.
The minister as well commends the stability of prices across the country.
The prices of basic foodstuff or cereals are relatively stable due to restriction on food export to neighboring countries. Price of products such as maize, beans, potatoes, sweet potatoes, yams, bananas were stable in the west, center, south, littoral, northwest, southwest, and east regions, despite the COVID-19 pandemic and its related restrictions.
From an overall view, the production of food in Cameroon is facing obstacles from pests, locusts, to security problems. With the new program the Ministry of Agriculture is launching, measures will be put in place to reinforce food production in the country. As the celebratory period draws closer, parents are confronted with the myriad of issues to tackle, that is food, dresses for kids, and above all, toys for the children. These issues are complicated further by the current economic hardship everyone is going through, a situation which parents blame on the coronavirus crisis. The question at stake is the type of toy parents should buy for their children. Toys come in various categories, and experience has it that these toys have an impact on the life of the child and may be negative.
A child was watching a television, a child who came, an IDP who came from the northwest region, and it
was an action movie,
and somebody came out with a gun. The child had to go down to the floor because they have been used to this kind of scenario. So imagine such a child who will see his classmate or his mate in the quarter playing with a toy gun. That child's mind goes back to the, to what he has been living in the northwest or southwest region, and that trauma continues in the child's mind.
On the other hand, these toys can be of an important need in the life of the children.
It's just the joy of the children, nothing else, because most of those toys, how many of them are so educative? How many of them, and how many people can afford the educative toys?
Personally, I would say that my toy has helped me in one way or the other up to date. Because I can do braids, I can do some rastas because of the toy I had.
Authorities have been calling on the conscience of parents to consider the type of toys to give to their children, discouraging war toys and those that are linked to violence. This will be for the well-being of the family, society, and the country at large. Members of the Cameroon trade unions have just celebrated the 75th anniversary of their association. On the occasion, they disclosed that syndicates or trade unions in Cameroon have lost their value over the years, a situation which they wish to reverse and regain their one-time decisive position. For their anniversary, the Trade Unionist Association has undergone a 2-month-long series of activities across the 10 regions of Cameroon, which they closed on December 16, 2020 in Yaoundé. Amongst their preoccupations are youth unemployment and social security, amongst others. Members of the syndicate say if there is one thing that they can boast about in their 75-year existence, it is the improvement in living standards of Cameroonians. They add that they have been able to ensure better salaries for a good number of workers, pay pensions, and social security. However, there is still a long way to go and much to be done.
There are a lot of things that need to be done. We need to modernize the trade union. We need to work a lot to improve the welfare of especially those workers in the informal sector. We need to bring them together to be able to improve and bring forward the decent work agenda that is being set or promulgated by the International Labour Organization.
The fight of the trade unions is not only external but also internal, a situation which they hope to bring an end to.
We need to also come together, reduce infighting within the trade unions, so that we'll be able to come together as one and fight for the common good of the workers. I think that's what is left for us to do. Many people are coming with different agendas and they are disturbing the real work of the trade union, which is to fight for the welfare of workers.
The Association of Trade Unionists of Cameroon is aging, but hopes to continue living and fighting for workers' rights, and to obtain this, they have their eyes on youths. For the past 5 years, they have been investing in the recruitment and training of young Cameroonians to continue the fight. Out of Cameroon, Nigeria has lifted the closure of borders with neighboring Benin, Cameroon and Niger on Wednesday, December 16. The reopening of land borders comes after a year from August 2019, when a closure was imposed to curb the smuggling of rice and other commodities. The closures have been blamed in part for rising inflation, which recently hit a 30-month high amid a harsh economic and social impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Under President Muhammadu Buhari's instructions, the ban on importation of rice, poultry and other banned products still subsists and will be implemented by border patrol teams, reports say. It should be noted that the closure had a major impact on Benin, a key exporter of foodstuff to Africa's most populous country, which is heavily reliant on imports to feed a booming population of some 200 million people. The European Union has postponed nearly 90 million euros in budget support payments to Ethiopia due before the end of the year over the crisis in the northern Tigray region. An EU spokesperson confirms the information on Wednesday, December 16, noting that the EU is not in position to deliver budget support as foreseen. The money, he said, will only be given if the federal government meets the EU's conditions. Some of the conditions include granting full humanitarian access for relief workers, access for civilians seeking refuge in neighboring countries, and an end to ethnically targeted measures, hate speech, and restoring communication lines and media access in the Tigray region. Recall that the war between Ethiopian Federal Forces and the Tigray People's Liberation Front broke out on November 4, and the conflict is said to have killed thousands and displaced more than 950,000 people, according to the United Nations estimates about 50,000 of them into Sudan. President Felix Tshisekedi of the Democratic Republic of Congo has announced the mortal remains of former Prime Minister Patrice Emery Lumumba will be repatriated from Belgium. In a national address to the country in front of Parliament earlier this week, he said the national hero would be given an appropriate burial. He said, in June 2021, on the sidelines of the celebration of the 61st anniversary of our independence, the homeland will show its gratitude to Prime Minister Patrice Emery Lumumba, one of the national heroes whose relics will be repatriated and to whom we will give finally a burial worthy of his sacrifice for the party. Lumumba was an enduring national hero, an icon of those who demand that former colonial powers face up to their history. He is one of the fathers of independence of Congo-Kinshasa. He was assassinated on January 17, 1961. In June, Belgium announced its intention to return to Congo the teeth of its hero. Lumumba's daughter, Juliana Lumumba, had officially informed President Felix Tshisekedi of the family's decision to send a letter to the King of Belgium in hope that he would help recover her father's remains in order to end their interminable mourning. In turn, the Congolese head of state wrote to King Philip, King of Belgium. Still in the DRC, stricter new measures to curb COVID-19 have been imposed as cases have soared. The government said restrictions would start on Friday, December 18, with a curfew from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. The communications minister further said schools would close earlier for Christmas holidays and that there would be a ban on public gatherings of more than 10 people. There will also be a ban on ceremonies before burials, and sports competitions will continue without fans. The DRC has recorded over 14,000 coronavirus cases and over 350 deaths from the disease since the epidemic was officially declared in March. The head of state on Monday blamed the second wave to be caused mainly by the importation of cases from foreign countries and the relaxation of preventive measures. Out of Africa, France's Emmanuel Macron has tested positive for COVID-19, forcing several European leaders to self-isolate after coming into contact with him. The announcement was made this Thursday morning by the Élysée Palace. The 42-year-old president was tested after developing symptoms and will now self-isolate for 7 days as requested by the French health authorities and has cancelled all foreign trips. Prime Minister Jean Castex, who was in contact with Macron at the government weekly cabinet meeting on Wednesday, will also self-isolate. EU chief Charles Michel and Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez are amongst the leaders having to self-isolate. France this week ended a 6-week national lockdown, replacing the measures with a curfew to help deal with the soaring cases. There have been nearly 2.5 million confirmed cases in the country since the epidemic began, with more than 59,400 deaths, according to data from Johns Hopkins University. France plans to start rolling out its coronavirus vaccination program from the 27th of December. For the first time after 70 years, the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, UNICEF, will help fund food parcels for those affected by coronavirus crises in Southwark, South London. The food delivery by the UN agency to children living in the UK affected by the coronavirus pandemic follows that of the Second World War in 1949. UNICEF is to award grants to 30 local organizations through its Food Power for Generation COVID initiative. The humanitarian agency has pledged a grant of $25,000 to the community project School Food Matters, which will use the money to supply 18,000 nutritious breakfasts to 25 schools over the 2-week Christmas holidays and February half-term, feeding vulnerable children and families in Southwark, South London, who have been severely impacted by the epidemic. The World Health Organization has announced Beijing will welcome an international team of COVID-19 investigators due to travel to China in January. But China has strongly opposed calls for an international inquiry into the origins of the coronavirus, saying such calls are anti-China, but has been open to WHO-led investigations. It is, however, unclear whether the WHO investigators will travel to the city of Wuhan, where the virus was first detected, with discussions on the itinerary ongoing. A WHO member and diplomat on Wednesday reported that the team is expected to go to China in the first week of January to investigate the origins of the virus. The United States, which has accused China of the outbreak of the virus, has called for a transparent WHO-led investigation and criticized its teams, which allowed Chinese scientists to do the first phase of preliminary research. Chinese state media have suggested the virus existed abroad before it was discovered in Wuhan, citing its presence on imported frozen food packaging and scientific papers, claiming it had been circulating in Europe last year. Australia has launched a formal appeal to the World Trade Organization seeking a review of China's decision to impose hefty tariffs on imports of Australian barley. Trade Minister Simon Birmingham acknowledged that appeals to the WHO are not perfect and they take longer than would be ideal in announcing the move on Wednesday. Acknowledging the appeal could take years to be resolved, he said that Australia would also request formal consultations with China regarding dumping and other duties on Australian barley amid an increasingly bitter trade and diplomatic row between the two countries. Beijing imposed an 80.5% anti-dumping and anti-subsidy duty on Australian barley back in May, after claiming that barley farming was heavily subsidized by the government. The tariffs are expected to cost Australian farmers over $300 million annually. The disputes over Australia's barley and coal exports to China are the latest chapters in Beijing's increasingly bitter trade and diplomatic disputes with Canberra, which first turned sour when Canberra banned Chinese-based tech giant Huawei from building its new 5G broadband network. It further deteriorated over Australia's push for an independent probe into the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic, which was first detected more than a year ago in central China, Wuhan. A Taliban delegation arrived Pakistan's capital on Wednesday, December 16, for a 3-day visit to discuss the Afghan peace process. The delegation, which is led by the militant group's top political leader, Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar, is set to meet Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan and the foreign minister during the visit, according to a Pakistan Foreign Office statement. The visit comes a day when Taliban militants accused and killed at least 13 security personnel in Baghlan in northern Afghanistan, according to the head of the Baghlan Provincial Hospital. Violence has surged in Afghanistan for over 10 years since the Afghan insurgent group signed a deal in February with the United States that included a timeline for foreign forces to withdraw from the country. The Taliban political sources said they would take up the issue of raising violence with their military leaders during their leadership meeting. That is how we saw it in today's edition of the news. Thanks for watching, but don't go away. Stay on DBS TV for more of our programs. Good night.